Our guest for today is Efosa Ojomo. Efosa leads the Global Prosperity Research Group at the Clayton Christensen Institute for Disruptive Innovation, a think tank based both in Boston and Silicon Valley. Efosa's work has been published or covered by the Wall Street Journal, Harvard Business Review, The Guardian, the World Bank, NPR, and several other media outlets. He speaks regularly on the topic of innovation, and the importance of innovation and for economic development is the central theme of his book, The Prosperity Paradox, which is co-authored with Clayton Christensen and Karen Dillon. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi, Efosa. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Curtis. Good to be with you here, brother. Good to be with you.
Let's dive in. We've been chatting a bit. You're a co-author of the book Prosperity Paradox, along with the late Harvard Business School professor Clayton Christensen and Karen Dillon. In the preface of the book, you tell this story of your first foray into development work, providing wells in Nigeria, where you're from, through this nonprofit that you created. So can we start with you just telling us about this work in Nigeria? Because I think that experience is a great way to frame the overall thesis of your book.
Yeah, I will. I will tell the story. As you say, I'm originally from Nigeria, and I began to learn about poverty and development and struggles in 2008, really. I moved from Nigeria to the U.S. for college, and I stayed. I moved in 2000. I stayed here. 2008, I start reading and learning about poverty, and it gripped me like nothing had ever gripped me before. And so first thing I do, I start a nonprofit organization, go to Nigeria, and we go into a really poor community and they don't have water. And what's the first thing you do when you see a community that doesn't have water? You're like, oh, I know the answer. You build a well. And that's what I did. I got a group of friends together. We raised some money, started a nonprofit called Poverty Stops Here, and we built a well in the community. A few months after we built the well, it broke. And I'm back in the U.S. now. I'm still based in the U.S., right? I'm back in the U.S. and I got to figure out a way to get somebody to the community to get the well fixed. I do it once or twice, but after a while, it occurs to me this is unsustainable. I can't keep doing this because I have a full-time job and my whole life here. And that was probably the first time something hit me that something is wrong with this equation. There's just no mechanism for sustainability. We saw people who needed water, they didn't have it. Water is so important. And we provided what we thought was the solution, which is a well. And all of a sudden, the well breaks, which is what wells do. I don't care where you build a well, it's going to break after a certain point of time. But there was no mechanism for fixing it. And that for me represents the microcosm of the larger development problem. We go in with resources, we try to help with, I think, the best of intentions, but we don't realize the mechanism that helps sustain many of these resources that we provide. That was a big learning for me, and I'm glad I had it early in my foray into this whole development space.
I know a key concept or term in the book that you and your co-authors use is market creating innovations. So let's dive into that a bit. Can you elaborate on why market creating innovations are so important? And I guess too, in explaining this term, there are a couple other types of innovations. You guys talk about sustaining innovations and efficiency innovation. So how do these three different types differ from each other?
Curtis, if I asked you right now, and I asked all your listeners, define innovation, you would come up with what I think is a very intelligent definition, and it would work. Many of your listeners would as well. However, the definitions would not be consistent with one another. They would all be correct, but they may not quite be the same. That is, I think, one of the biggest problems with the word innovation. So what we try to do in the book is provide a very simple definition of the term and then categorize innovation into three main buckets, which you've highlighted. So simple definition is a change in the process by which you transform inputs of lower value into outputs of higher value. Very simple. So you go to a restaurant, there's innovation going on. They take all these ingredients, they transform it into a nice meal. outputs of higher value. Now, when we begin to think about that definition in the context of economies and economic development, what we recognize pretty quickly is there are going to be some people in the economy who have access to the outputs of higher value, and there are going to be others who do not have access. And it's important for us to categorize innovation that way because categorizing it that way helps us identify what we need to do to make those innovations come to life.